All right, it's 4:31, so we can begin. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Newby, and I will be presenting on Southern Networking. This will be a quick sort of lecture workshop on ways that you can build up your social media, make websites, reach out to the community, and make sure that you can keep members engaged with internal communication methods. If you haven't been to a workshop yet today, welcome to the NOC, and I hope you all have a really good time. A little bit about me. I'm Jonathan Newby, as I said. I use he, they pronouns. I'm currently an undergraduate student at William Mary in Virginia, double majoring in film media studies and American studies. I joined the Socialist Party a few months ago, and I'm working on organizing a chapter in southeastern Virginia. I am also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and Industrial Workers of the World, and I identify as Black, bisexual, and non-binary. The purpose of this presentation is sort of twofold. First, I want to introduce all party members to these crucial skills of online organizing and marketing. And at the end, I want to provide sort of an open forum for anyone who might want to ask questions, talk about frustrations that they've had with online organizing, and see if there are any interested folks to, someone wants to be admitted, see if there are any people willing to start sort of a Southern network of Southern states in the Socialist Party USA to help us network and build each other up, hence the name Southern Networks. For those people just coming in, hi, we're just getting started. Since we're living in a pandemic right now, it's obviously very hard to organize in person, either because there are restrictions in place on gatherings, or perhaps you just don't feel safe being out in public, which is totally valid. That being said, that doesn't mean that all of your organizing work has to stop. There are still ways that you can use the internet in order to sort of market your party, make sure that your chapter is known in the community and the wider nation, and make sure you overall have a good, clean presence on social media, since that's very important in this digital age that we live in. And why should you care? Obviously, like I said, it's very important that online organizing is emphasized where it needs to be. Despite some valid criticism of slacktivism, being like posting Me Too on social media or Black Lives Matter on social media, but not doing anything in person to back that up. There are very valid criticisms of those, but it's still important that we use the internet as a tool. And because of that, we need to be able to have a proper social media in general online presence to make sure that we are out there and known not just for our hashtag, but for our message in general. And like I said, we live in the 21st century, this digital age where the internet is basically the new frontier, even though it's been around for a while, it's always evolving. And therefore, we need to be able to take advantage of this to build a multi-generational, multiracial, and most importantly, accessible party for the working class. This first section, I will cover some social media tips. These are three sort of basic essential platforms that every party should have to some extent. There is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook, everyone's pretty much familiar with that. That's the platform that most people have in some capacity, especially those in generations. And you should try to use a Facebook page principally for general information about your party as well as event planning. Facebook has admin privileges that allow you to create events and publicize them on your Facebook pages and elsewhere, which will be very useful when you say want to have a general body meeting or some commission meeting or organizing meeting, and you might not want to send an email, or you make a Facebook event on top of an email to really emphasize getting the word out. Twitter is a little bit different. While you can still use it for general information, it's best to use it for directly interacting with the public and your members, as well as propagandizing. Twitter has a bit of a reputation for being sort of a ideological fire escape of sorts. And you can definitely use that to your advantage. Despite the sometimes toxic atmosphere, it's quite useful to use Twitter to be able to directly at people, directly engage with people, and also spread your message in a bite-sized form, which would be very useful for those who are just learning about your party and just need like that 11, 30-second elevator pitch and not like a whole essay, even though those essays and long form series are important. And thirdly, there is Instagram. Instagram is owned by Facebook, but unlike Facebook and Twitter, it is almost exclusively photo content. Instagram is almost entirely populated by photography and graphic images, which makes it very different from your text-based Facebook and Twitter. What makes Instagram special for organizing purposes is that you can use it to build sort of a public face, like a in-person photograph representation of your chapter or party. Like if you do mutual aid or if you have a general body meeting, these are opportunities for you to take pictures with your members in action and post it on Instagram and say, this is what our party is doing right now on the streets in our community in order to better our world. And it's also, like I said, pretty good just for graphic marketing in general. There are a myriad of online tools such as Adobe, Canva, etc., that will allow you to create posters, flyers, even letterheads, banners, and more. And Instagram is a perfect place to post those since they have graphics specifically tailored in size to fit in Instagram and also in Twitter, Facebook, and other platforms that you may be using. Each platform has its own pros and cons, but each of them has a very crucial part to play when crafting the public-facing side of your chapter. That is everything in your chapter that you want the public to know about you. Next is the issue of etiquette and professionalism. I use professionalism in quotes because we don't want to conform or replicate these liberal, sanitized civility tactics that we see from other social media personalities, such as avoiding conflict until the point where you're lashing out being unproductive and having this both sides mentality. It's very important that we resist that, but just as important, we need to be able to use our social media and online presence to maintain a positive image of our chapters in the party in general. I cannot stress this enough. When you are posting about Socialist Party USA, either as an individual or as part of your chapter social media accounts, you are a representative of the party. Everything that you do reflects on us, so it's important that even if you're not per se on your best behavior, you still need to be able to be respectable, following the golden rule, all these things that make you a decent human being that you are. And there are some do's and don'ts here on the side. Do not get into arguments with people in the comment section. This should be sort of a no-brainer, but I sometimes see this a lot with organizations, and it's very important that you avoid that because, like I said, you're a representative of the party. And when you get into a Twitter war with someone in the comments section or in wherever it may be, and people see that, they could very often be turned away from you and your message because of this one bad thing. If someone has a disagreement with you about a post you made or a position of the party, if they seem like a genuine person, you should invite them into your direct message or your inbox, being like, hey, I know you have concerns, feel free to direct message me and we can talk about this more in depth away from the public. But obviously, if the person is like a liberal or a right-wing troll, you are more than free to block them and also delete any derogatory comments that they made, especially if comments they made have slurs or epithets, which are not good to have on social media and just are bad in general. On the sort of flip side, you don't want to become a troll yourself. You don't want to bait people or other accounts where you don't have the power to do so. Like, we at the Socialist Party have very valid criticisms of other socialist organizations out there, But that doesn't mean that we should say go on Facebook or Twitter and call them out for their tactics, which it may make us seem petty to some, which is also a turnoff. That isn't to say that you should not criticize them, but know where to do it. Doing it on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and doing it for the clout per se is not a very good tactic and can harm anyone involved. It will also be helpful to create some sort of internal code of conduct. It does not need to be long or complex or like a bylaw of constitution. It just needs to be a basic list of guidelines for how you use social media, how you'll engage with the public on social media, and how you will make your social media accounts a space for collaboration, organizing, and information. And like I said earlier, you are a representative of the party. So whenever you share something, you should always make sure that it is at least in some way in accordance with the SPUSA's platform, its vision, its current projects, etc. It would be very uncharacteristic for a Socialist Party chapter, for example, to share one of Trump's tweets in support of Trump. That would be ridiculous. So that would reflect back on the party. So you want to do whatever you can to make yourself a conduit for SPUSA organizing an image. As far as the management of social media, this gets a little bit more into the techie side. It is always useful to have at least 2 people managing all your social media accounts. You can have these embedded in your constitution bylaws if you have them, or just have at least 2 dedicated volunteers who know how to use the platforms and are responsible people. If you have bylaws, you can say, oh, my president and my secretary, or my co-president and my co-secretaries will be running the social media accounts. You can also have a dedicated communications officer role, someone who specializes in the social media online interactions. That would be very helpful as well. This is kind of a no-brainer, but it bears repeating. Do not use the same passwords for multiple accounts. That is an easy way for you to lose access to a lot of things if you are hacked, for example. If someone gets access to your Instagram account for the chapter, if you use the same password, they now also have access to your Twitter and perhaps also your Facebook as well. Wherever possible, you should have at least 1 email account specifically set aside for the chapter. So for my chapter, I made a Proton Mail account just for chapter work, and I use that as the recovery emails for all my social media accounts, as well as just for a general information platform. And it should remain under chapter control. If you have constitution bylaws, embed that in them so there is a clear chain of command and accountability, and not just under control of any one person. Because if this one person, say, goes rogue or just goes silent for some reason, and you need access to something and you can't get in contact with them, you're now stuck. And the last tip for management is a little bit nuanced, but I think it bears saying. Maintain a good follower-following ratio. What I mean by that is, I'm sure many of you have been on social media before, and you see an account of either a person or an organization or maybe even a meme account where they're following like 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people, but they're only followed by 10, 20, maybe 30 people. From a public standpoint, looking at a ratio like that, where you're following a lot of accounts but not having a lot of followers, makes you look a little bit like a spam account or not very serious. That's not to say that you can't be following more people than you have followers, but below this tip, I say don't follow accounts unrelated to SPUSA or your community. So it's perfectly acceptable for you to follow other SPUSA chapters, follow Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker on social media since they're presidential candidates, and also good organizations within your community, as well as perhaps national organizations that have prominence in your community. but I would avoid following specific individuals, especially if they're unrelated to the party. And like I say on the right, this can't be stressed enough. You really do need a chain of accountability and dedicated people who are willing to put in at least some effort to making sure that your social media is as active as realistically possible. In this social media age, everyone, a lot of people, I should say, are going to check out a organization or a chapter on social media before they even consider going in person. And it is not a very good first impression if you go to a chapter's Twitter page or Facebook, Instagram page, and they haven't posted anything since 2016, for example. And they also don't want to see like a bunch of troll comments. They don't want to see your other posted conspiracy theories. So it's important to keep sort of a clean social media presence. That doesn't mean that you can't touch on controversial issues or that you have to be polite all the time. Just know that what you post is public, and especially if someone screenshots it or goes to like web archive, it is always there. So if you post something that reflects badly on the party, that could have lasting impact for a long time, not just for your chapter, but nationally as well as with your coalition partners. Our next section will deal with websites and branding. The reason why you'll want a website is because it will serve as a central, comprehensive hub to everything, at least public, about your party. If I saw Social Party USA post a really fire tweet on Twitter, and I'm like, hey, this party sounds cool, I want to check it out more, I would go to their website and learn more about who they are, what their mission is, how can I get involved, and how, most importantly, how can I join? It's very important that your website looks modern and up to date. It isn't a very good first impression, or in some cases, second impression, for someone to go on your website and looks like it's stuck in 2005, for example. You'll want it to use a modern platform. You should be able to proofread your website to make sure there aren't any errors. You should avoid using clip art and other sort of, I guess, cheap graphics for your website. You need to look at least to some degree professional and serious. On the left, I have some possible web builders that I personally have used. There is Google Sites, Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, and a bunch of others. Google Sites and WordPress specifically are free to use and make almost in general. So I personally use Google Sites for my chapter's website. It's really easy to use. And for these website builders, you do not need a lot of computer science experience. All that you would need is the ability to type, click, and drag in most places. Especially with Wix and Squarespace, they offer tutorials when you first sign up and start making your first website. So it will be very useful for you to take advantage of those so you know how to work the platform. As far as managing a website is concerned, it's really not a complicated process. Unlike the social media page, you don't need to update a website every day or every week, but it still needs to be updated regardless. You don't need a lot of experience to run a website, but if you want to embed other web content on your website, that may require some HTML experience, which is easy to learn. In fact, some of these platforms make it easy by giving you templates or coding workshops for you to be able to embed HTML and other content on your website that comes from elsewhere on the internet. And like social media, websites, and accounts, you really should have more than one person managing your website. A social media page, you can get away with two people working it. But with a website, especially the larger and more complicated that it gets, it may be useful to have 3 or more people working on it, with each person working on a specific section of the website. It should be noted that while the platforms that I listed in the last slide and others are generally free to use, there are some premium features like making a mailing list or getting rid of ads, etc., that are only available with a premium account. And depending on what features you want and the price that you're willing to pay, that can monthly run you between $10 to $30 a month. And in most cases, you will be billed yearly. So instead of paying $10 individually every month, the website might ask you to pay $120 upfront for the whole year. Especially for Wix and Squarespace, if you want your own domain, you will have to pay for the actual domain name, which you can get from almost anywhere for like $3 to $5 a year, depending on the actual domain. But you will also need a premium subscription on top of that. For example, socialistpartyusa.net, that is a custom domain. If you wanted to use Wix or Squarespace, you would have to pay for this, which might run you 10 or so bucks a year, on top of whatever Wix wants to charge you for the management of that domain and the website in general. Some general tips and tricks. On your website, you should have dedicated pages for at least these 4 things. If you have more, then great. You should always have an easy to access web page for contact information. Like, email this account if you want to get involved with the chapter, or email this person if you want to get involved with such and such committee, which also goes into the second bullet point. It will be useful for both current members and prospective members if you have a web page dedicated to who your officers are, what committees, the working groups you have, and what projects and contact people you have. If I'm joining Socialist Party USA because I want to join, say, the People of Color Commission, I should have a web page like Socialist Party that has a section labeled commissions and working groups where I can see, okay, here's the POC committee, here's how I can join that. You should also have an About Us page, and you can have that somewhat split up. I recommend that in the beginning of your About Us page, it should be like simple elevator pitch, 1, maybe 2 paragraphs about who you are and what you do. And later on in this About section, or in another web page entirely, you can have a little more in-depth discussion or essay on what your vision for your chapter is, what work you do, what's the history of your chapter, the party in general, etc. Also, and lastly, you should have a web page dedicated towards your event calendar. So people can be able to click a link to either a web page, or let's say you want to have a Google Doc or Google Calendar. People should be able to click on that and say, oh, so this chapter has membership meetings on the second Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock. Or if I want to join the mutual aid working group, I can come to their next meeting on, let's say, October 31st at 7 o'clock. Also, along with website management in general, you should always check to see if your website has broken links, especially if you're linking to other websites. Like if I wanted to link to, say, DSA or the ACLU or Socialist Party USA, I should regularly make sure that whatever I link to, whether it be an article or general webpage, etc., that is still accessible. Nothing is more annoying to some people than clicking on a link to go to another website and it gives you a 404 error message that can't be found. Because it's frustrating that you are trying to find this information, but you're getting an error message that you can't get to it. So whenever possible, check your website for broken links. If anything is broken, try to find a way around it. Like maybe the website you're linking to just move the article, just find a new link to this article website and paste it, or just delete the information altogether since it might have been deleted altogether and you no longer can use it. Also consider having a private web page or an entirely different website specifically for your members. Your public website should be a largely informational space, but a members only webpage or website would be useful for members to specifically access information that may be a bit more confidential and meant only for members, like say the Constitution and bylaws or some specific content information for projects that they're working on. In this picture here, I have a picture of the Socialist Party of Sava, which is what I've titled my local chapter. I've used Google Sites for it. And in this tab here, you can see that I have a contact page. I have a page that we're going to work on for local priorities, our platform that we're going to develop, and actions that we're going to be doing in the community. I've also taken from the Social Party USA to link our statement of principles and how we want to build our new social society and a strategy for doing so. And once we elect officers, they will be listed here on our local executive committee. And if I go home, I can see just a general, this is who we are, this is what we do. And if you want to get in contact with us, here is a link to do so. As far as branding is concerned, it will be very helpful to have a standardization of how you want your party to be represented. Like in this image here, you can see the Socialist Party seal. Although there are some variations of it, you will never see a legit SPUSA seal that greatly deviates from this. Like you likely would not see the white and the black hands reversed, the earth wouldn't be orange and purple, our color scheme wouldn't be black and yellow. We use black and red, these specific shades, and we also use this specific font for our banner here. And that's very, very important because it can be very confusing for not only your members, but the public in general, for you to have multiple different variations of the same thing and they don't know which is legitimate or not. And it also might make you look more scattered as an organization. You should use consistent naming conventions. Like if you're going to shorten Socialist Party USA to SPUSA, you should use SPUSA for every single time that you want to shorten the SPUSA name. This also sort of applies to social media usernames. As much as possible, you should try to use the same username across multiple sites. For Socialist Party of Sava, we try as much as possible just to use Socialist Sava, whether it be for our website domain or our Twitter page. We want to be able to have a consistent sort of tag that people can use across platforms as much as possible. If that's not possible, that's fine. Just try to do it as much as you can. If you have any logos, seals, etc., use them regularly and use them standard and consistently. If I remember correctly, once you become a charter chapter, SPUSA will provide you with a seal or allow you to make one. That is your opportunity to have a specific branding that is special to your chapter that you use whenever possible. And beyond just the graphic of the seal, logo, etc., this also means having a standard color scheme and a common font family. For example, you don't just want to describe your chapter's color as dark blue. because there are 100 different shades of dark blue. You would want a specific shade for your chapter. And this is where things just such as hex code and red, green, blue codes come in, because they will allow you to pinpoint the very specific shade of color that you are looking for. It would be very disjointing to have a slightly darker red for a logo and then a slightly lighter red for the rest of your website, for example. And for families, this is also important. You don't need to use the same font everywhere. In fact, you kind of shouldn't, because it makes the website or whatever you look a little plain. But that being said, you should still have some standard conventions in place. Like if you're going to use a big title font followed by a smaller text font, you might want to say use Helvetica for all your title font and Avenir for all your text fonts, etc. Are there any questions? You can type them in the chat or you can unmute your microphone. Okay, I see Joshua in the chat.
Hey. I'm sorry I was late. I
It's fine.
was on the road from Etastota back to Raleigh and got pulled into the house right as this meeting started. Approximately, do you mind telling me how much approximately you've paid that cost you on Google Sites to get the Southeast Virginia website? Do you pay a monthly fee for that, or even if you pay it yearly, about how much it costs?
Google Sites is completely free, so it costs you nothing to build or maintain. But as you can see, there's this generic sites.google.com before you get the socialist part of your Seva. If you want to have, if I want to do like just socialistseva.com, I would have to pay for that domain. But custom domains cost much less than actual website development. So I could just pay for socialistpartyseva.com for maybe $5-10 a year, depending on where I get it.
Okay, awesome. And it's good to know you're so close, comrade.
Yeah, awesome. If there are no other questions, we can continue. This next section deals with internal communication and partially with running virtual meetings, with sort of an emphasis on privacy as well. So you have people who have joined your chapter, they want to get involved. That's excellent, but you will need a way to keep them engaged with one another. And while email is a great informational tool, like for getting out announcements, I consider it a very inefficient form for like getting in contact with individual members, messaging a group, etc. That's where I recommend having a group chat platform for your chapter, organization, etc. Here's a list of a bunch of platforms that I've used personally or have seen other people use. There's Discord, which is known for being a gaming group chat platform, but is now used for a bunch of different organizations. In fact, Social Party USA maintains a Discord server for members. There is also Slack, which caters towards working people and working professionals. There's Element, which used to be called Riot.io, which is a decentralized platform, a little more complex, but you can definitely maximize privacy on that platform. If you're looking for something very basic for a group chat, you can use GroupMe. It's very easy to get people to do that, just like Discord and Slack, just give people a link and they can join immediately. And if you have a Facebook page, you can make a Facebook group and link your page to it. It's pretty popular for, say, general discussion groups and book clubs, for example. I know that Socialist Party USA and some local chapters maintains Facebook groups for like their book clubs that they have or some general sort of talking and organizing. And there are a bunch of different websites that you can use to have like a general forum. Socialist Party USA maintains its own members-only forum that you can join after you've joined the party. Excuse me. Choosing the right platforms is critical for the success of your party. And in a way, it's not a very complicated thing. Like, it's not a life decision whether you use Discord over Slack, for example. But it's important to poll your membership and see, okay, what platforms are people already using, and how can I integrate myself into those, or what platforms would people like to see us use, and how can I bring those into the party? If a lot of your members already use Discord, for example, it would be pretty simple for you to make a separate Discord server and just invite them to Discord. It will also be easy for them to do so because they're already on Discord all the time. So if you have message and you need to get out to them, it will be pretty hard for them to miss. And it's also worth considering having separate platforms for separate audiences. Like, for example, I maintain a Discord server for just socialists in Virginia in general, and they generally have to be members of Social Party USA or part of any of organizations that we sort of partner with. But I also maintain a Socialist in Virginia Facebook group that is just for anyone who identifies as a leftist in Virginia, who may or may not be part of Social Party USA, as a place to network and perhaps recruit when necessary. In all of these, it's always important to keep privacy in the front of your mind. Not all platforms are suited for maximum privacy or are encrypted, for example. Facebook groups are good for, say, the public, but it would be not a good thing to use a Facebook group for members-only discussion. And especially doing sensitive work and conversations, you would not want to use a Facebook group, for example, or maybe even a Discord server for things such as Antifa, union organizing, etc. For those, you should consider investing in a encrypted format for discussion. Element.io, I know, allows for some encryption, and there are certain things that you might have heard of, such as Signal, that also offer encrypted text services, either for free or for a small fee. Whenever possible, whenever you have a members-only platform, you should have some sort of verification process in place. It can be as simple as, hey, want to join the Discord? Email me so I know that you're a part of this local chapter. Or it can be a little bit more elaborate, like, we need to set up an in-person meeting or in-person Zoom so that I can get to know you face-to-face and know that you are legit. Anything is better than nothing, but a combination of things will be incredibly useful for preventing interlopers, trolls, etc. For mailing lists and communication beyond the groups, this is more focusing on the public side. This is where it's useful to have a mailing list in place. This is something where you can write an email about, okay, these are the meetings that we have this week. Here are the projects that we're currently working on. Here's some other news that you want to know about, and get that out to your entire community, whether it be members specifically in your chapter or the general public. Socialist Party USA maintains a mailing list, which I posted a screenshot of down here, that was sent out to everyone within the party, and I'm sure some public members as well, letting them know that we were having this national organizing conference this weekend. And that's a mailing list is very important for getting out public information on a mass format outside of social media, especially if you want to share something that is a little bit more sensitive and you don't want it on social media. It would be useful to maintain a mailing list. A couple sites such as MailChimp, Constant Contact, etc. will allow you to easily do mass emails, and allow you to make sort of beautiful emails that people would want to read. Like this email, for example, even though it's very basic, it has a color scheme, it allows you to put images directly into text, and it has an action button for people to click on to register automatically. It is very useful to have something like that, as opposed to a generic lister where it's just a wall of text, and oftentimes even a bunch of quotes from other previous conversations, which can get very difficult to keep up with at times. Community outreach. This will be a pretty short section because for this is something where you would likely want to attend our mutual aid workshop, but these are just some generic tips for you to keep in mind. If there is an organization that you've been checking out that you really like and want to partner with, it's just important just to reach out to them, whether it be messaging their social media page or finding an email for either their organization specifically or an officer of their organization, in order to sort of get to know each other, discuss your goals, etc. And importantly for your contact, you should be able to offer assistance in some form, even if it isn't, hey, let's collaborate on a big project together. Just be like, hey, I see that you are running a food drive. I will talk to my members and see if any of them would be willing to donate food, for example. And you should invite other organizations to your chapter and vice versa. Invite your chapter to join their events whenever possible in order to create a truly collaborative give and take relationship. This was told to me when I first joined the party, and it's something that I really sort of emphasize with and keep on my mind on the daily. Is that Socialist Party USA is not here to take over other organizations or be this hostile domineering force on the left. We are here to collaborate, make the world that we want to see, and that means being a good community partner to all the organizations that we keep in contact with. And sometimes that means that an organization doesn't want to engage with us. Either they will ignore your request or say, sorry, we're not interested in collaborating. And that is completely fine. It is important for us as SPUSA members to respect the fact that not everyone will want to work with us. We just need to make the effort to at least extend a hand and hope that they will take it. If they don't, that's fine. Each organization is autonomous and should be able to do their own thing within ethical boundaries, of course. It's also sort of important to have multiple contacts within an organization if possible, especially if this person isn't like the president or the vice president. They're sort of a lower ranking or very specified officer. They may go dark. It's important for you to have a secondary contact and be like, hey, I couldn't get in contact with this person. Let me tell you what I told them. And like the other points, collaboration is key. You should find ways whenever possible, like I said, to publicize their events, go out to their events, and if possible, work together on campaigns. This may require more planning on the front end, but it can be very rewarding if you are willing and able to put in the effort. This last point sort of ties in with the SPUSA is not here to take over point, but you should not join an organization just to use it as a recruiting pool. Like, I'm also part of Democratic Socialists of America, and I talk about Socialist Party USA often, but I'm not just there to get people to join the Socialist Party. I've done a little bit of work helping them with their website, building up an FAQ, etc., and engaging directly with some of their members, both in organizing work and just as a general friend. And that is important to keep in mind because some people may be of the impression when you first approach them that you're there to take over or use their space as this recruiting pool to build your own party to their distress. If you show through your actions and your words that you're just there to be a partner, they will be more receptive to any recruiting that you may do in the future. Are there any other questions? This is the end of the lecture point. Okay, I see Joshua again on Stack.
Yeah, sorry about that. Do you
You're
have
fine.
any advice for hosting Zoom meetings?
Like virtual group meetings?
Yeah, it's something that down here in Raleigh we try to do, and there are times that I have more non-members on meetings than members. I mean, I run other Zoom groups that tend to be more successful than the actual local meetings. Do you have any suggestion just during COVID about getting people on and on the platform, getting people to show up, other than making a Facebook group and sending out emails?
I would say that it is generally something that is a sort of localized situation. Every community is different, and that's something for you to investigate. But in general, it's like you can't force people to come to your meetings, obviously. So it's just important that you just get the word out, make sure that you're open about your meetings, what you're going to be doing during those meetings, inviting other organizations to your meetings if possible, and just making sure that you don't at least appear closed off. This is something that I've come into contact with. Like, there is someone who was interested in joining our my local chapter. And I got in contact with him saying, hey, we've had a meeting or two, but I haven't seen you there. Why might that be? And he said, oh, I wasn't sure if, like, this place was open for me. So it should be important for you to be able to say that this is a open, safe, and brave space for people to come, whether they be a member or not. And even offering alternative meetings, for example, like beyond your general business membership meetings, it might be possible to just have a informal chat. I've had one of those before. I got a couple people out. I'm going to have another one after the National Organizing Conference. Just a place for people to come and go as they please, ask any questions they have about the party, and not feeling like they have to commit right then and there, but just be able to learn in an informal space before they get involved in any official chapter work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And right before the end of this session, can I make a quick plug for one of my groups?
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can wait until the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Until everybody
I don't
else
see
is done.
any other questions, so you can go. I can put open floor time.
Okay. No, I was just saying that several of us, the North Carolina Greens and the Raleigh, the Northern Piedmont Local of the Socialist Party, and like Central Oregon and coastal South Carolina are doing on Thursdays. We're doing like a left unity theory discussion group learn. We're doing Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth right now. At 8:30 on Thursdays. Every Thursday, there is a Google Doc where we cover previous discussions. If anybody, wants to join, we would love to have anybody that can come. And it's been really good so far. And just if anybody on this call is interested, just let me know. I think Greg's got the link on the SP site, and if anybody's interested, I don't know who we'll do after Phenom, but we're going to try to keep it going.
Well, it's great to know. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And like I said, this is open floor time. If you have any questions that you want to ask, anything else that you want to say, I'm all ears. I have my contact information if you want to reach out to me specifically. And especially if you're interested in organizing some sort of regional organization within SPUSA, I would love to get your contact information so we can start organizing that at some time.
I have a Kyle on Stack for a question.
All right.
Kyle, want to ask their
Yeah.
question in the chat, or I can unmute Kyle.
I'll just unmute myself. That was a good, very good presentation, Jonathan. I see you did
Thank
a
you.
lot of work on it, or whoever else helped you with that. It's good. I was wondering, in your opinion, what kind of problems do you come across in the South trying to organize a socialist group versus
Hmm.
what you would think somebody would come across in northern states, or I'm in the Northwest. I'm in Oregon.
Hmm.
So it'd be kind of interesting to see what kind of things you guys have to come up against.
I think me personally, from what I've seen, there is sort of a sort of perception thing, stereotype thing going on. Like, not just outside of like any left rebels or Eastern socialism, be like, oh, I'm not sure if I can organize for a socialist party in the South. But even among some socialists and some unions who see the South as very hard to organize or unorganizable because of this sort of conservative bias that they think the South has, which to some extent is true. But I'm hoping that with this presentation and with other people sort of building up and organizing, whether online or in person, that they can say the South isn't just this quote unquote hillbilly, back roads, whatever derogatory term you want to use. We have very critical social movements in the South, such as Corporation Jackson, for example, and we have a strong history of social justice and civil rights that people really should look beyond sort of the stereotypes of what they've been told by the media or other sources about the South and know that we are here and just as valid as other regions of the United States and the world in general.
And where exactly are you located at?
I am located in Richmond, Virginia right now. I attend college in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is like 50 miles down the road.
Cool.
Are there any other questions or comments that anyone else wants to bring up?
I just want to say thank you, comrade. This was really awesome.
Thank you.
And since you're
I'm glad
relatively
you enjoyed it.
you should
Mhm.
you should contact us
Of
down here in
course.
Raleigh. So we're not
Mhm.
we're like 4 hours away. So
Mhm. Definitely.
awesome.
If there's nothing else, thank you all so much for coming. If you want to take a picture of this slide, you should go right ahead or DM me or email me, text me. That's a Google Voice number, public. Anyone can access it. Get in contact with me anytime. I love hearing from other people in the party and elsewhere. And if you're interested in a couple resources, these are a couple things that I've read and found that could prove useful for you to think about when you're organizing for social media, website use, etc. And thank you all so much for coming.
All right, folks, thank you so much. And Jonathan, you have a webinar right after this one, right?
Mhm.
Folks, I sent out emails to all the registered organizing conference participants, and you should get the links. If not, you could direct message me or text me at 201-803-7574 with your contact, and I'll send you the login. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Of course.